President Donald Trump has threatened to cut off federal aid to Michigan because the governor had the audacity, of course, to expand voting. So now he took to Twitter to rage out. He said, Michigan sends absentee ballots to 7.7 million people ahead of the primaries in the general election. This was done illegally and without authorization by a rogue Secretary of State. I will ask to hold up funding to Michigan if they want to go down this voter fraud path. All right. So, look, I got a lot to say to that, right? Because I live in Michigan, and I don't believe our Secretary of State has gone rogue. And certainly, I'm sorry, this was not done illegally or without what authorization? Whatever happened to states' rights? I mean, it's literally the 10th Amendment, the ability to run elections in the state. This is not like Gretchen Whitmer going out and she's the governor of Michigan, going out and saying, oh, no, the entire country is now going to have vote by mail, which, by the way, would be an excellent idea if Donald Trump were to say, we should all vote by mail in the middle of coronavirus. That would be a fantastic idea. I would be behind it 100% and would give him all sorts of credit. But that's not what's going on, okay? If Gretchen Whitmer wants to send people absentee ballots in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, which, by the way, Michigan is still doing terribly. Look, we're doing the lockdowns, but there's been a lot of anti-lockdown protests. All these people, they get into a big group with their guns and without masks and no social distancing. And they come from all over the state. And then they all spread coronavirus to each other and then go back to the other parts of the states. No wonder we're not doing very well. Okay. And so if voters want to not have to go out and possibly expose themselves, as well as poll workers, to this virus by having the ability to mail in their ballots, they should be able to do so. But unfortunately, Trump doesn't like the idea of more people voting. Why? It's because, well, honestly, he's already admitted it. He said if we do all this stuff like expanded voting and mail-in voting, a Republican would never win again. I mean, there it is. Like, hey, at least he's being honest, right? So now here's the thing. The excuse that they use, and he used that in that tweet, voter fraud. Oh, there's going to be so much voter fraud with mail-in ballots. Is that true? Not at all. For one, the military uses it, right? Service members all over the country use this, and also states have used it. So let me go over and give you some of the information on how reliable mail-in ballots really, really are. Now, in fact, since 2000, more than 250 million votes have been cast via mailed-out ballots in all 50 states. It's according to the Vote at Home Institute, right? In 2018, more than 31 million Americans cast their ballot by mail, and that's about 25% of all election participants. So already we use vote by mail all over the country. Okay, so already a quarter of all voters use it. So expanding that more is not a big problem, shouldn't be a big problem. So now in that one election with the 31 million ballots, right? You know how many instances they found? 0. None of the 5 states that held their elections primarily by mail had any sort of voter fraud since making that change, going to primarily mail-in ballots. None. Now, Oregon has been doing this for quite some time, right? They've sent out since the year 2000, 100 million mail-in ballots. You know how many cases of voter fraud they had? 12. Out of 100 million, they had 12. Not 12,000, not 1,200, 12. Rounded to the 7th decimal point, that's a 0.0000001% of all votes cast that were voter fraud. You are literally more likely to get struck by lightning than commit voter fraud by mailing in a ballot. So knowing that, right, and just the sheer numbers of ballots that are legitimate compared to the very, very infinitesimally small numbers of those that are not legitimate, that are voter fraud, right, or that are fraudulent. Knowing this, why would you be against that? Especially when we're in the middle of a pandemic where in-person contact is strongly advised against unless you're practicing social distancing and wearing masks. And not, of course, touching equipment as having many different people touch equipment, pens, pencils, sitting at desks, breathing in the same enclosed area. I mean, all of those are very, very risky to do now. Why would you be against doing mail-in instead of that? It's because you have something to lose. It's because at the end of the day, you want less people to have access to voting. And that's the simple truth, right? And the reason that they want that there's this one side that doesn't want more voting is because they have less of an advantage. When when less people vote, the Republican Party gets an advantage. That's why they don't want more people voting, and they admitted that. You can go back and Google the Goo syndrome, Paul Weyrich, right? He's modern, the godfather of the modern conservative movement, came out and he said, I don't want more people voting. The more people vote, the less we win. And that's paraphrased. Now, this is somebody who later on basically on his deathbed said, oh, you know what? Turns out I was wrong. That was bad. Turns out we do want more people voting, but the Republican Party is against that. And it's because we lose. We lose. So, right. Now, any other excuse, since there's no, giant amount of voter fraud, right? So mail-in ballots, again, are super, super secure. If you're trying to make an excuse that voter fraud is the reason, well, you're wrong. That excuse is complete and utter bullshit. And so people look, the people who are making the argument against this, they know exactly what they're doing. So don't try to pretend otherwise. Oh, no, I care about the integrity of elections. Well, really? You'd never do anything else that any other action to try to verify the integrity of our elections, and to expand voting in other ways. So the entire reason that you use that excuse is because, one, it sounds good, right? Oh, I'm just trying to protect the integrity of elections and make sure only Americans vote. But you know the truth. What you're advocating for is less Americans voting because your side loses. And that's what that is. Okay. So now that said, Donald Trump's coming after my state because the governor has refused to open up. And that's what this is about. She might have even criticized his handling of COVID-19, definitely disagreed with reopening the state, even though technically she's following the Trump administration's phased-in guidelines for reopening. But of course, he's like, oh, that governor, that Michigan governor, that woman, right? There's nothing that upsets Trump more than a woman or a minority in power who doesn't follow exactly what Donald Trump wants them to do. And so, look, I'm not a huge fan of Gretchen Whitmer, but in this case, she's handled the pandemic a lot better than a lot of the other governors in the country, especially, Southern GOP governors, although there are some that are handling it fairly well. And so what this is pure pettiness on the part of the president of the United States. He's acting like a child. like a baby. And what makes it worse is that Michigan is right now in the middle of an emergency. There's been catastrophic flooding. 2 dams in Midland County had burst. It's a mid part of the state. So downtown Midland, this is a place that I've been to before, right? And by the way, it's the home of the Dow, of Dow Chemical. They could be under 9 feet of water very soon. And yet, you've got thousands of people that right now are being evacuated from their homes. Hundreds of millions of dollars possibly in damage. And yet, this guy, this so-called president of the United States, we're going to pull your funding because you want to make it easier for people to vote. So what? You're going to allow all those people that just lost their home to not get emergency funding? No, get out of here. You're an absolute menace to society. How dare you pull money from my state to throw a little bitch fit? Like, I don't care who you are, dude. These people's lives are on the line. And by the way, I don't care what state it is. This could be Florida that's underwater, and it probably will be due to climate change at some point. No, there are people that need help. But of course, Donald Trump would help Florida because he has investments in Florida. And by the way, Florida has Ron DeSantis, who does everything that Trump wants him to do. And that's, of course, the difference here. Compliant GOP governors get rewarded, whereas resistant blue state governors like Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom get punished. And Andrew Cuomo, even though I have a problem with Gavin Newsom and Andrew Cuomo and certainly Gretchen Whitmer, I'm on their side when it comes to this. How dare you use funding, federal money that is necessary as a cudgel to try to get your way to stop people from voting? I mean, this is horrifying. This is ridiculous. This is disgusting. Oh, because, she hurt my little feelings. She hurt my fifis. Well, certainly it seems like the Republicans are a feelings over facts party at this point, especially when when somebody who is as thin-skinned as Donald Trump is the literal leader of the party. Thinnest skin imaginable. Feelings everywhere, but no facts. That's what we have. Disgusting. There's no redeemable qualities in this man. No care for human life. No care for any of the suffering that's going on. No, he doesn't deserve to be president. No, the man deserves to be escorted to the White House in handcuffs. Now, that'll never happen, of course. No, in 10 years from now, establishment liberals will be like, I can't believe people were so mean to Donald Trump. Look at how wonderful he is compared to President Logan Paul. Ridiculous, right? And I got my own problems with establishment Democrats. But at this point, this man is dangerous. He's a criminal and he's a lunatic and he's getting people killed. Americans are dying. And it's not just from COVID-19. Imagine that there's an emergency in your state, massive flooding. Thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people losing their homes, right? Thousands of people losing their homes. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars worth of damage to these cities. In the middle of a pandemic, where now you have to deal with 2 of these things, 2 gigantic problems. Being able to render aid and assistance to these people while also making sure to protect everyone from coronavirus. And this is an impossible task by yourself. Insane. And yet Trump, don't care, give a damn. If you don't like that, if you don't like me pointing that out, if you're a Republican, I don't care. Go cry somewhere else. Snowflake, beta. If you're defending this guy over his disastrous COVID-19 response, and you're trying to deflect to China when it wasn't China that controlled our response to this, to the virus, the same virus that he refused to do anything about for 2 months. That time that we basically, when we had locked down, we bought ourselves some time to get prepared. What did we do? We pissed away 2 months. 2 months. This is a president that defunded FEMA, cut the pandemic response team so that he can give money to himself and his rich friends. No, if you're defending that, you're part of the problem. You're not an American, not a real American, because you don't care about American citizens. You don't care about your brothers and sisters here. No, it's all about me, 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 me. The individualism run extreme, right? There is individualism and there's collectivism and there's something in between, right? We're supposed to be in between. But when it comes to these people, right? People like Trump, it's all about me, individual, me, 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 me. How does it help me? We're not a community anymore. And that's sad. And that's why, that's why this country is falling apart, because nobody cares about each other anymore. Not these people anyway. No, all they care about is, am I winning? Am I winning yet? What am I going to get from this? No, you're not an American. You're a horrible person, and you're nothing more than a ridiculous partisan. Am I clear enough? Hope so. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.